This video is designed to help you understand how the math unit, which is the midterm assessment, ties into the teaching project, which is the final assessment for this course. The math unit is designed to take place of a 5-day unit. And of course, we're all a little different in what we do on our site, whether we're a field experience student that needs a 15-hour course requirement, has a cooperating teacher, and some of us are actually in the classroom, ARL, with our own students, our own classes. And some of us kind of fall in between those two. So what we need to do is talk about how it might look different, but all of the components must remain the same. So whether you work with a cooperating teacher or you have a classroom and you're working with a mentor teacher, or you have an administrator that's observing you, they all need to kind of follow the same format. When we first started off the semester, we looked at the big picture, right? So we had our long-range plans. We looked at the Nevada academic content standards, whether on our own or within our cooperating teachers, lesson plans or guidance documents, or whatever their framework was, right? We wanted to kind of look at those, see where we were going to be throughout the semester so that we could find a time that would make sense for us in our projects to write these lessons, to create this math unit, to then focus on just one lesson plan for the final project. So now we're at the math unit component, which is the midterm assessment for this course. You'll submit 5 lessons, and you're always also going to submit one of the 5 lessons for peer review. So you're going to submit 2 things. One, you'll submit the 5 lessons or the math unit or however that looks, and then one single lesson for peer review. That lesson does not have to be in that Nevada state PDF yet. You can. Some students have done that in the past, just to kind of get comfortable and get feedback on that format. This is all gearing you up for the final teaching project, the lesson plan, the interview, and the reflection. The lesson plan you'll have submitted at least once. It's kind of like your rough draft. You'll get feedback both from myself, from the peer that reviews it, as well as your cooperating teacher or your administrator or mentor teacher if you're already in a classroom. You'll take that feedback and you'll fine-tune it to submit in May. The interview is a collection of notes from your cooperating teacher and yourself, or your mentor or your administrator and yourself at the conclusion of you teaching this lesson or activity, however it works for you in your class. It doesn't have to be a major paper or anything like that. Just kind of like, what are the questions that you want to ask? And what feedback did you get based on those questions? They could relate to the math lesson that you taught or teaching math in general. The reflection paper, when you get to that final assessment, that final week, you'll see that it doesn't necessarily just have to be about the reflection on the lesson itself, but you can also incorporate other components that you feel are important throughout the course of this semester. The Math Center is an assignment that's upcoming. It's at the end of the month. It's at the end of March. But I always kind of address it here because some students feel like they need to put it in the math unit. You do not have to include your Math Center in your math unit, but sometimes it makes it a little bit easier to kind of think about it now, to think about what kind of center activity would support student understanding for this lesson, and then fine-tune it to present with your peers in about a month. So the math unit is 125 points. 100 points comes from providing 1 week of lesson plans. And I say it in this context because that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for 1 week of lesson plans for mathematics. Now, everybody has a different experience in here. Some are in preschool programs, some are in special education rooms, some are in middle school or high school, just depending on what your program of study is. So I say 1 week because if you're in a block schedule situation, 1 week isn't necessarily 5 days. Instead, you would want to focus on providing 3 days within a unit to present, to get feedback on, but still providing one lesson plan for the targeted lesson plan on which you will focus on your final teaching project math lesson plan. The other part of that is that even though some of us don't start and finish a whole math unit in 1 week, you only need to provide a 1 week snapshot. So if you have a unit that covers, about 2 weeks time frame, you really only need to include what kind of plans would go into 1 week of lessons. That targeted lesson plan that you're going to focus on for the remainder of this semester, you're going to explain why you chose this lesson plan. Maybe it's because you've been using this great activity, or maybe it's like you really want to jump off the unit and you've got an activity to launch that lesson. Maybe that's just what works best for your cooperating teacher. The video of the lesson. So you'll record that lesson. Some people do it on an iPad. Some people do it on a phone. It's really for you. So nobody else is going to see this. It is meant for you. Listening to yourself is not always the easiest thing. And we sometimes have a skewed memory of how something actually went. So you can really see how much wait time you're giving your students, how many questions you're asking. Are your explanations thorough? Are you mumbling? Are you providing pictures and illustrations, or are you letting students talk over you? So just kind of giving you that feedback at a time later on where you're not in the moment. The lesson needs to be formatted in the Nevada State lesson plan format. For this particular assignment, I've said you don't have to put it in that lesson plan. So if you have your own, like you put it in a Google Doc or a Word doc and you want to submit it that way, for this one, it's okay. Just know that down the road, when you submit it as your final draft for the final exam, it needs to be in the Nevada State lesson plan format. This one will be submitted for peer review, and part of one of the other modules will be for you to review another peers. Those directions will be coming up. When we get to the end, some of these components will make a little bit more sense. And if you have questions or you need further explanation, please message me. I did want to show a couple of examples that I have just to kind of give you a framework about how you can submit your assignments. For the 5-day math unit, you can do it a couple of different ways. Some students have submitted all the lesson plans in one document. This is the first lesson, this is the second lesson, like just kind of going through what the lesson components are, and you can kind of see where the organization for each of the lessons comes into play. You can do it that way. And then at the very end of your document, explaining why you chose, which lesson you chose and why. You can submit 5 different lesson plans. Some students have submitted one document, and within that document, they are saying, this is my lesson sequence, here are my accommodations, what are my supplementary materials. There's all materials need to be provided, so they have links to the videos right within the document. You don't have to submit something extra outside, but this would be a good way to embed what supporting materials you have for your lesson. Some people put it all in one document and put all the words in there, but notice that this person has used Nevada State's format and has put all 5 days into one single document. There's day 1, there's day 2. Just know that when you submit this for the peer review, we only want 1 day. So to get the best feedback from your peer, don't confuse them by putting all the days in. Limit it to that 1 day that you chose to focus on. I also wanted to share a different format. So some of us, we use slides. So if you want to do it in that format, because it's going to help you, it's going to be a little easier to do when you actually present it to the students. You can put it in a slideshow, just as long as it, follows all the components that are necessary, and do it that way. So that's also another option that would work for me and satisfy the requirements for the math unit. So that's all that I really had to say about the math unit. If you have questions, please message me. You do not need to reinvent the wheel, but don't send me a photocopy from a book. Don't send me a link to a